It's an honor to be here. I have a question about indigo children. I suspect my son is part of that, what they call now indigo children. I wanted to get Abraham's opinion or take on it.
What's the definition that you are hearing from those who are assigning the labels?
From my understanding, in indigo children, they were born in a certain time frame from, I believe, 1975 to the turn of the century. I've also read that they have two...
Oh, they're not still coming?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm hearing yes, but that's from my understanding. And they're supposed to have 2 extra genes, and my son has always been very different, and he's going to be 20 this month. And he's having a really hard time, excuse me, I'm nervous, about his differences. He's able to take on a lot of other people's energies, and it affects him. He tends to know, he'll tell me what will happen next, and it happens. That's been going on since he was like in 3rd or 4th grade, so I'm wondering, how can I understand this more?
Well, often someone will note a person or a segment of the population and assign a label about particular characteristics. And then as the label becomes more and more recognized, then the characteristics become more and more recognized, because law of attraction makes that so, doesn't it? In other words, all of you, everyone who is physically focused, is an extension of source energy. And all of you have come forth with this energy flowing through you, which you are allowing to varying degrees. And the more you allow a conscious awareness and therefore alignment with that energy, then the more actively you are able to utilize the energy. Everyone is creating their own reality, but most people are doing it by default because they're flowing vibration all over the place and they don't realize that they're doing it. And so they're like corks on a raging sea, sort of just bobbing about with no control. So over time, and we're going to give you the complete understanding of what this label means, and far more than that, but we're going to build a little basis of it here first. So you've been hearing us today talk about your source energy, and you express yourself into the physical, and that in the physical format the contrast causes you to expand and evolve and become, and that the larger part of you becomes it. And when you allow yourself to reach for the better feeling thoughts, you let you keep up with you. We like those words so much. You in the physical form, keeping up with the you that you were before you were born, and the you that you've become since being in this physical body. And then we've talked about the separation, too strong a word, between who you're letting yourself be and who you really are in any moment. And that's what your emotions are telling you. So then when you croak, you close that gap. When you're first born, you're one stream of consciousness. There's no separation. And even as that infant, you separate just a little bit, just by your association with physical life. Then you go to sleep. As infants, you sleep a lot, and you close that gap. You wake up, you widen it a little. The longer you are in your physical body, the more you acclimate to that gap. The longer you live, the more you find things to fuss and worry about, and the more you widen the gap. When you meditate, you close the gap. When you come out of meditation, your gap is usually closed for a while until you begin to focus back onto things that you're fussing and worrying about. When you slumber, you close the gap. When you go to sleep, when you wake up, you widen the gap. So this relationship between you and you is an ongoing process. It's something that all of you are experiencing, and every emotion that you feel is your indication of how closed or open, how much allowing or disallowing, how much allowing or resistance you've got going on in any point in time. When you have what humans call your death experience, you close that gap. Now, this is the thing that we really want you to hear. So all that you've lived and all that this life has caused you to become, once you have your death experience, you become it. And it is from that evolved, expanded vantage point that you make the decision to come back again. So each time you reemerge, you come from that vantage point. That's why there's a generation gap. That's why your babies understand the computers when you don't. In other words, they're coming from this evolved point of consciousness. Now, of course, they need to learn the ways of the human life. They have to grow up into their body. They have to get some teeth and some hair, and they have to get mobile. In other words, there's a lot that they have to learn from you. But the thing that they do not need to learn from you are all the pitfalls that you've been carrying around wanting to teach them. Human parents are so interesting. Your little ones are born, and as soon as you think they're comprehending, you begin to give to them one by one all of the things that are wrong with the world in an attitude of, I will protect you if you know about these things. And this is just the list of a few thousand bad things that have happened to me over my lifetime, but I have many more archives of bad things that have happened to others that I want to teach you about in order to. And what happens, these little ones coming in, they are pure positive energy in the sense that they know the clarity of their being, and they know the well-being of their being, you see. Well, now getting to the subject that you're bringing to us. Because of this intensity of contrast, in other words, there is more contrast happening on your planet than ever before, and that's logical because it is the most expanded version of this physical experience that has ever been. So the contrast, of course, is greater. When the contrast is greater, it means that the asking is greater. When the asking is greater, it means that the answering is greater. So this is the time of awakening. This is the time when there are more asking and there are more answering. The question is, are those who are asking in a vibrational place to hear the answers that they are listening for? Well, these children being born are hearing the answers. They're born with the answers. In other words, they're coming in knowing that those that are being born today are coming knowing everything that all of you have been asking about. Future generations will benefit dramatically by the contrast you all are living, just as you are benefiting dramatically by the contrasts that previous generations have lived. What we are talking about here in this gathering is how you can be in your generation exploring your contrast, giving birth to your desires, and becoming a vibrational match to what you have given birth to. And there are many energies coming forth who fall into the many different categories. In other words, sometimes they're called indigo children. Sometimes they're called autistic children. Sometimes they're called homosexual or gay. And we're not saying that all of those categories are overlapping. We're saying that large numbers of energies coming in are coming with this new determination to be unconformable. Because they're noticing that most people are easily convinced against their inner knowing to be different than they naturally want to be. And more are coming forth, and that's why we ask you, do you think that it has stopped? Because there is much more of an influx of that kind of strong energy today than ever before. It has not stopped. It is stronger now than ever before. We're not really big on cataloging and pigeonholing anyone. We think it's wonderful when people are intuitive, and we think it's a wonderful thing that your child has always shown signs of that and that you have readily acknowledged it. But we would not put a label of indigo child on anyone. Instead, we would say, you have come forth from source energy, and whether you were born 80 or 100 years ago, or whether you were born 12 years ago or 20 years ago or 5 years ago or yesterday, you all are extensions of source energy, and that energy that is coming forth to all of you is, you see, here's the thing that we really, we so want you to hear this. This energy stream that's coming forth is available to all of you. The same energy stream that is feeding these new, what you were calling indigo children, is the same thing that is feeding all of the resistant old ones that are not allowed. In other words, everyone has access to this same stream. You're just noting that there's more willingness to allow the stream in those that you are labeling. It doesn't mean that they're special and that the stream is being offered uniquely to them. It means that they are in a better place of allowing the stream than most others. A woman sat in the chair not long ago. She said, my child has a question for you, Abraham. Why are grown-ups so grumpy? And we said, because the longer you live, the more you find to fuss and worry about. The more you use as your excuse not to allow yourself to be a vibrational match to who you really are. And so it isn't that the indigo children are unique in that they have more access to more energy. It is that they have less resistance to the energy that you all have access to. That's the best way of stating it. And that's what they've come to teach. They've come to teach ease. They've come to teach not sweating the small stuff. They've come to teach no longer fussing and worrying. They're teaching clarity of focus. That's their strongest gift to you. And think about what that means. Often that means that often they are labeled both autistic or indigo. And the reason is because they are born with a determination not to be easily conformed by you outside influencers who think you've got all the answers that they were born with. They're born knowing what you've forgotten, and it's rather annoying that you keep thinking that you've got the answers that you've forgotten when they still remember them. And it's sort of the difference between the action-oriented world that we were talking about earlier and the inspirational world. In other words, so much struggle among humandom. Humankind would have been kinder. So much struggle among that human mortal experience has caused a sort of pessimism that permeates most of your experience, and the fresh new ones don't have that. And then you sort of have this battle of the pessimistic versus the optimistic, and who will win. And usually the pessimistic win because they've got all the facts of reality to back them up. Look at this, and all the optimistic new ones have is a feeling. And those with the facts of what's gone wrong just sort of smear their facts all over the place and say, you can't possibly maintain your optimism with all of this reality that we have to show you. And yet, you know who keeps winning? The optimistic. There's this dilution ratio that is so wonderful, where the old ornery ones keep croaking and re-emerging back into pure positive energy, and the new knowing ones keep being born, and then those like you, formerly old and ornery, who come into alignment. All is very well and getting weller.